what's your interest in the forum today?
Particularly to see the extent of the debate at a political level in relation to how far the thinking is about the future of agriculture and what's needed to meet the future demands.
Did you know that it's Week Without Pesticides in France? In fact, it's actually becoming a European event each year. What do you think, considering the discussion today and the need for increased food and feed, can we live without pesticides?
I was aware that it was the Week Without Pesticides in France. And I think if we really want to do a week without pesticides, then we should do it properly. And that means that we should take away food from the shops. And I think that probably answers your ultimate question. You know, without pesticides, we lose 30 to 40% of our production. And at a time, as we've been discussing today, when population is growing and consumer demand in developing countries is growing, then that is not only a loss we can't afford to sustain, but it's also one that we've got to increase over and above the current production levels. And we've got to do that in the face of climate change, which is going to make all of our production issues more challenging.
Why is, though, the subject of pesticides, why does it have such a high level of concern with the general public?
I think that has to be the extent of media coverage it gets, which is always bad. It's always about the potential for problems. And let's be clear, it's only, largely bad news that makes news. It isn't really particularly exciting to tell people that, thanks to the, good and safe use of crop protection products, that you get the food on your plate. That kind of doesn't make news. So I think, it's always easier to tell a story which is a scare story. And we've seen plenty of that. That being said, of course, also one needs to look at exactly how these products are being used and to ensure that they are actually being used safely. And so I think, when we look forward to, sustainable production in agriculture, we have to look at both how we increase production, but how we do that with a recognition of what the consumer wants and what the environment needs.
But how are you doing that?
There's a number of initiatives across the industry and with the farming community which looks at how products are being used, the stewardship that goes with that. Much of that is certified. Farmers are trained.
Do you train farmers, or who trains them?
There are professional people who train them, but also the companies and associations and farmers groups also work together to be able to provide training courses, which of course ultimately are certified by the proper authorities.
And just to clarify, you're talking about training programs to use pesticides properly?
Yep, we're talking about training programs to use pesticides properly and to use the equipment safely, which covers all sorts of machinery that farmers might use, and it's about how they use those safely and how they use the agrochemical products also in those machinery safely, how to dispose of things safely. So it's the whole scope.
Thanks. What role, if any, do pesticides play in the future of agriculture?
I think they're one of the tools that we have available to us, or I hope we continue to have available to us in the future. We do face some considerable challenges, as we were previously talking about, in relation to increased demand on food production and also increasingly looking at fuel production and what has been talked about here today about green products, i.e. being able to get things from agriculture rather than from the petrochemical industry. So we're looking about the need to be able to produce sufficient of these different commodities. Okay, so crop protection products are going to be one of the tools that are available to us. We have to be able to allow our farmers to use a variety of technology. This really, I think, embraces a lot of what is growing these days in terms of integrated pest management, which is looking at how the farmer grows his product, which land he uses, things like crop rotation. It's also about what strains of crops that he might use, what seeds he uses. So it's really looking at all the chemical, the biological material that we work with, the potential that we've got in these plants so that we can realise it, but also working with the environment to be able to get the best possible so that we minimise pest and diseases, minimise weeds, but ultimately can still use chemical intervention as almost as a last resort in order to protect our crops, having made such an investment in them.
So that is integrated farming, what you just explained?
It's an element of integrated farming. Integrated farming looks at the whole farm production, and I guess as we look to the future, we'll increasingly start to look at carbon and greenhouse gas emissions as part of a whole farming balance, and integrated pest management is an element of that.
Okay. Thank you. My last question. What should the industry, NGOs and politicians do to meet the challenges we've been talking about today?
I think the key thing is that we have to work together. We've just been talking about integrated pest management. I think what we're actually talking about is this has to be an integrated approach. We have to look at the pillars that support society, support economics, and support the environment. Without good soil, as we've been talking about today, we don't have the basis to be able to produce all the food and fuel that we need. So we have to take care of our environment, and we have to produce food for the world's population. So we have to look at the balance between the two. And so this is about not taking extremes of view. It's about looking to say, how can we get the best out of all of the knowledge we have, and also the best out of the technology that we can offer for the future.
Thank you very much.